On today's episode, we've got three family cars from 1982. One is French and rides like it's floating on air, using a suspension system so complicated it might as well have been designed by a watchmaker having a nervous breakdown. One is German, shaped by the wind itself, chasing efficiency like it's a national sport. And one is British, the replacement for the Cortina. Three very different ideas, three serious contenders, but only one of them would actually win. This is Four Wheels and Fuel. Let's start with the contenders.
Facile d'amare.
Nuova Citroen BX non ha mai problemi. È facile da amare.
Citroen BX, Paris, 1982. Citroen unveils a new family car, and because this is Citroen, it immediately ignores everything a family car is supposed to be. It's called the BX, and it looks like it's been drawn with a ruler, a very sharp ruler. Flat panels, hard edges, angles everywhere. This isn't styling, this is geometry. The man behind it is Marcello Gandini, the same man who designed the Lamborghini Countach, which already tells you this is not going to be normal. But here's the interesting bit. Before the BX, Gandini had designed a concept car for Volvo in 1979 called the Tundra. Volvo looked at it, paused, and said no. Too radical, too strange, too much. So the design was shelved. Citroen, however, saw the same idea and said, yes, we'll have that. And that's why the BX looks the way it does. It's not just unusual, it's a rejected idea that found a better home. Underneath that sharp, angular body, things get even stranger, because this car doesn't have springs at all. Instead, it uses hydropneumatic suspension with pressurized fluid, gas spheres, and self-leveling. In simple terms, it floats. You go over a bump and the car just glides over it like it's not entirely convinced the road exists. Pop the bonnet and things become almost normal. A 1.6-litre engine with about 90 horsepower, 0 to 60 in around 11 seconds, and a top speed of 109 miles per hour, and fuel economy of 37 miles per gallon. So, no, it's not fast. But that was never the point, because the BX isn't trying to compete, it's trying to be different. Even the body joins in with a plastic bonnet, plastic tailgate, and plastic bumpers. Less rust, less weight, and more sense than you'd expect from something this odd. Inside, it's just as unconventional, with satellite controls, strange shapes, and a dashboard that feels like it belongs in a low-budget spaceship. And yet, after a while, it works. That's the thing about the BX. It shouldn't make sense, but it does. Over 2 million were sold across Europe, and it became a success because beneath all the strangeness, there was real engineering, real thought, and just enough madness to make it interesting. Brilliant, bold, completely different. But was it enough to win?
This is the most aerodynamic production car in the world, the new Audi 100. If it had the same drag factor as the average car, it would register 0.43, which would feel something like this. But the new Audi 100 actually has a drag factor of only 0.30. And naturally, the less a car has holding it back, the less fuel it needs to drive it forward. The Audi 100, the most aerodynamic production car in the world.
Audi 100 C3, Ingolstadt, 1982. Audi unveils a car and immediately breaks a world record. Not for speed and not for power, but for slipping through the air. 0.30. That was its drag coefficient, and in 1982, that wasn't impressive. It was absurd. Most cars were about as aerodynamic as a brick. This wasn't. Audi had spent years in a wind tunnel, years. While everyone else was building cars, Audi was arguing with air, and eventually the air lost. The shape tells you everything: long, low, smooth. The glass leans back, the tail cuts off cleanly, even the mirrors look carefully negotiated. Panel gaps are tight, surfaces are clean, and nothing feels accidental. Every line has a purpose, and that purpose is efficiency. The result is less drag, less noise, and less fuel consumption. It didn't fight the air, it simply ignored it. Pop the bonnet and you'll find a 2.1-litre 5-cylinder engine, not 4, not 6, 5. Because Audi never really liked doing what everyone else was doing. It produces 134 horsepower, not dramatic but smooth. Unusually smooth, with a distinctive sound that doesn't quite belong to anything else on the road. 0 to 60 comes in under 10 seconds and top speed is around 126 miles per hour. And fuel economy of 43 miles per gallon. Quick enough for the motorway, but again, that's not the point. If you enjoy the stories on four wheels and fuel, you can support the channel by buying me a coffee. Just click the link on the screen. It helps keep these nostalgic car stories alive. Let's continue. Inside, it's exactly what you expect from Germany, with clear dials, a logical layout, and seats designed by people who understand spines. Everything falls to hand, nothing surprises you, and after 10 minutes, you stop noticing the car altogether. On the road, it's stable, predictable, and effortless. It doesn't ask to be driven quickly, it simply allows it. In 1983, it won European Car of the Year, and frankly, that wasn't a surprise, because while everyone else was still building cars, Audi had already moved on. Efficient, advanced, almost clinical, but being right isn't always the same as winning.
The shape of this car isn't just a designer's dream. It was honed by the wind. The new Ford Sierra. It's one of the most efficient, aerodynamic driver's cars ever made. Test drive the new Ford Sierra yourself. It's man and machine in perfect harmony.
Ford Sierra, Birmingham, October 1982. Ford unveils the replacement for the Cortina, and Britain loses its mind. The Cortina had been safe, predictable, sensible. This wasn't. This looked like it had been designed in a wind tunnel and then never corrected. Smooth, rounded, with no sharp edges. More like a shape that had been softened by the air itself. The British press called it a jelly mould. Company car drivers called it a mistake. And everyone asked the same question: where's the Cortina? Ford, meanwhile, had been doing something far more interesting. They had taken aerodynamics seriously. The Sierra's drag coefficient was 0.34. The Cortina's was 0.44. That's not progress, that's a complete rethink. This car didn't cut through the air, it slipped through it. Pop the bonnet and you'll find a 2.0-litre engine producing 104 horsepower. Not thrilling on paper, but that wasn't the point. Because underneath it had rear-wheel drive and independent rear suspension, a layout that still prioritised balance and feel. At a time when everyone else was moving towards front-wheel drive for efficiency, Ford chose to keep things engaging, and that mattered more than people realised. 0 to 60 takes around 10.5 seconds. Top speed just over 115 miles per hour, and fuel economy of 33 miles per gallon. But more importantly, it felt right. Balanced, predictable, and surprisingly composed through corners. This wasn't just transport, it was something you could actually enjoy driving, even if that wasn't what buyers were asking for at the time. Because in 1982, people didn't want new, they wanted familiar. And the Sierra wasn't familiar, so they rejected it at first. But then people started driving it, and slowly they understood what Ford had done. By 1983, it was selling in huge numbers, and later came the Cosworth. Suddenly, the jelly mold wasn't funny anymore. It was fast, very fast, and suddenly desirable. Nearly 1.3 million were sold in the UK, with production lasting until 1993. This wasn't the most radical idea. It wasn't the most precise either, but it was the one people chose. And that's why it won. So there you have it. France brought comfort in a way only Citroen could. Germany chased efficiency until the air itself gave in, and Britain took a risk. 3 serious contenders, but only one of them truly won. Because in the end, it wasn't about complexity or perfection. It was about what people actually wanted. And in 1982, that was the Sierra. Which one would you buy? Let us know in the comments. If you enjoyed this, you can support the channel on Buy Me a Coffee. It really helps keep these stories on the road. And on that bombshell, this was 4 Wheels and Fuel. See you next time.